quiet and hope that my technology doesn't fail me. And let's see. I think we are live, but I'm not sure yet, so I'm gonna wait. If any episode needs to have its technology in check, it's this one. And let's start the show. What up, people? It is episode 35 of Cheerful Conversations. We have just changed our time from 3 p.m. Central to 1 p.m. Central, and do your time changes appropriately. But my kids just started school, and I took them out of after school care, which means no more 3 o'clock show times, because I have to actually pick them up at 3 o'clock. So welcome to the new academic year. I cannot believe this is episode 35, and we have an awesome conversation today. This is probably going to be one of those where I will just go into super geek mode, and because we're talking about technology. I mean, what former electrical engineer would not love this conversation? And with me today is one of my dear friends and awesome tech gurus in my life, Emily-Hicks Rotella. Emily, I'm so glad that we're gonna have.
So nice to talk to you.
I know, and it's been a while, so I'm so happy that we had a chance to catch up a little bit before we started the show, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more as we progress through this episode. I think the technology worked well so far, aside from seeing very slow delays every once in a while in my video camera. I don't know what that's about, but maybe it just means I need to get a new computer. But anyways, so this is episode 35. I did a fun play on words for our theme. I was like, I need something fun and spunky because I have a fun and spunky co-host. So the theme is tech boom, but make tech work for you. And we're gonna just talk about all things technology, but one of the things that I want to preface this episode with is that we're going to go a little bit deeper. We're not going to be talking about like coding and that type of stuff, or, you know, what hardware you need. We're going to talk about the relationship that we as humans have with technology. So we're going to see where this conversation goes. I'm super excited. But before we get started, we got to do all the appropriate intros. So Emily, do you want to tell everybody a little bit about you and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, April. It's really awesome to talk to you and to be able to share this conversation with folks. So as you introed, I don't know if I'd call myself a tech guru, but I like to think of it that way. I have been working with nonprofits and nonprofit folks for the last decade or so. And I didn't come from a tech background. I came from a theater and music background. I wanted to get into helping nonprofits be more effective and efficient with their work. And what I found going back to school and then in my first role in a nonprofit was that data and technology can play a huge role in that. And I was really just enamored with it when I got into it, but it was so hard for me to learn until I found some really strong mindsets that gave me entry into technology learning success. And so I found that sharing those mindsets and helping people learn and get their confidence up and feel more comfortable on their own with technology was a huge passion for me. And so while I still am currently full-time at a single nonprofit in a tech role, I started my business, Make Tech Work for You. And I've been helping clients and partners with a ton of different kinds of technology needs. And like we were talking about before we went live, a lot of it is about mindset. Like there's technical skill and training for sure, but there's also confidence building and collaboration and all of the different kinds of mindsets that can actually lead people to more success with tech than maybe they thought they could have before.
Yeah. And so this is really, really interesting because I as much as we have had conversations and for the reasons that we have interacted in the past, I did not know that you had like music and theater background. Like, this is the first time I'm hearing about this. So that makes this whole conversation even more brilliant because, you know, I'm somebody who like, yes, I was like in the weeds, like coding all this crazy stuff through college. And now I don't do that at all in my work. But then but music and theater has always been a part of my life too. And so there's that creative piece of it. So what better, you know, conversation to have with people who maybe don't see themselves as gurus or have, you know, some sort of relationship with technology that might not seem the norm. And so there's hope for those of you who feel like technology is not your best friend. But okay, so I have to ask, so what types of stuff did you do in terms of theater and music when you were in school?
Oh, so well, I started college as a music theater major, and I just thought my goal was to be on Broadway in New York and be like a struggling actress / waitress.
Oh my God. This just makes me like love you 50,000 times more because I'm like, oh, we need to start talking about Broadway musicals.
Yeah, I actually found about halfway into that I didn't have the emotional vulnerability to really be successful as an actress. So I did switch over to literature halfway through. Still, you know, the humanities and the arts. Yeah. And I worked in book publishing for about 5 years while I was figuring out how to make a transition to the nonprofit world and what I wanted to do there. So I still really geek out over good music theater and I sing to myself on the streets of New York all the time. Oh my God. But I actually think that yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, when I was in New York in June, I went with a friend of mine to go see Hamilton. And this is like the third time that I've seen it. And I'm like, oh my God, like I can never watch it again because it was so good. I mean, not to knock Chicago, but like it blew me out of the water and I was sitting fourth row. So like the whole experience about it was like, oh, but now I almost am thinking like, maybe I should just come back to New York every year and just see a new Broadway show. So yeah,
that's definitely a good plan.
What's your favorite Broadway show that you've seen?
Oh boy, that's tough.
We're going off on a tangent a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I love Sondheim because I really like smart, fast lyrics. That's why I like rap music also. So I see a correlation in how I react to the music between Sondheim and good rap. I'm bobbing my head to it the same way. So it's kind of a funny connection. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, let's get back on track. Okay, so how we met. So this is interesting because, you know, Emily was one of my clients, is part of the program that me and my friend Gary run called the Accountability Success Circle. And she was actually one of the founding people who helped me kind of get this thing on its feet when I did this crazy pilot a couple of years ago. I had not known Emily prior, and it was funny because I had done all this work to build a email list, and I'm like, how do these people even show up, and how do I connect with these people that I don't know? But it was just awesome to, you know, when I created that program, to actually connect with people on my list, and it made me feel like, okay, there was something that I did that led me to some right people. So you were one of the people that I got to meet, and it was awesome. And, you know, it's funny because I think when I first met, like I was a little intimidated by you. I don't know if you ever knew that, because you were so thoughtful in your feedback. And I was like, okay, this is exactly what I need. But it's like, oh my God, am I like just a total failure here? Like, am I just not doing the right thing? But I've absolutely loved getting to know you and all of that stuff. I don't know if you know when our paths kind of crossed in the digital world over email.
Yeah. No, I think it was just the December or the late November before the program started. I was searching, you know, for help along my journey. Yeah. And your message really connected with me because I'm not a programmer by trade who just wants to hide in the lines of code. Not that all programmers are like that by any means, but that's not me. I need personal interaction. I need to see the impact of my work and hear it from people. And I feel like that part of that message in enjoying your work and living a full kind of holistic life really, it stuck with me.
Yay. Awesome. it's like, yes, thank you for all those branding courses that I took. Okay. So yeah, so we met through that, and, she's still very much a member. We don't like kicking people out when they've gone on to do other things, but we've definitely tried to keep in touch, and we still have to meet each other in person, but we'll make that happen, because I'm sure I'll come to New York at some point soon. Okay, so the next thing is, and maybe we've already kind of talked about this, so I don't know if there's an additional thing that you can share. What's something that you geek out on? And so it can't be technology, because that's the part of what the work is, and you've already talked about music and theater. So is there anything else that you geek out on, or some fun fact about you?
Yeah, well, there's tons of things that I geek out on. Recently, I have been watching a lot of videos of snowboarders. I love snowboarding, and it's the off season for me in New York. So I've just been watching videos. Facebook algorithm is really good. Once you watch one thing, it starts feeding it to you. So I love watching the technical skill, just the joy of snowboarding and the freedom of it. It's something I would do. If I was going to switch careers to something totally crazy and like start working out every day, it would be just snowboarding.
That's amazing. And I know that, the last time we talked, in January, you were talking about how like this was one of your 2019 like goals to like get on the mountain a little bit more. Do you feel like you lived up to that?
Yeah, I definitely did. I mean, in the early part of 2019, in the wintertime, I was out there a couple times a month, and I made an investment. I went with a snowboarding coach, into the terrain park, and gained a lot of confidence there. So my next goal for the end of 2019, when the season starts up again, is to do a 180 off a jump, which sounds so small for all these videos that I watch, but it would be a big accomplishment for me.
Yeah. So I'm going to just really quickly plug the fact that like, this is like one of my superstar clients. This is like the work that I have, the stuff that we did together. And I mean, it wasn't like, I wasn't doing anything for you, but to show how some of these plans get put into place and how they actually come to fruition. Emily is definitely somebody who like sets plans and like makes shit happen. I'm just saying, but it's amazing. It's just amazing what you can do. And, she's got 2 kids. Your youngest was just born. Was that in
last October?
October, right? Yeah. That was the other time that I was coming to visit. And so like, she's got a lot of stuff going on. She's got, she's working a full-time job. She's got a business. She's got 2 kids, and she is living life. This is like very good, much a success story for me. So I will brag about you all day long.
Thank you.
Love it. Okay. Back on track. See, I told you I was going to go off on tangents. Okay. So the next thing, and 2 more things before we start talking about technology. I like asking all my co-hosts a random question. Another way to just kind of get us ready to chit chat is this box of questions I have, and it's potentially vulnerable if you choose. There's 3 different categories, so I'm going to let you choose, Emily, and we don't know it until I pull it out. So one is an icebreaker question, just break the ice. One is a get vulnerable question, so maybe a little bit deeper, and then the third is laugh a little, so it might be a silly question. Which one would you like?
Oh, I like them all. I guess I should challenge myself, since I started by saying previously I didn't have the emotional vulnerability to succeed. So I like the vulnerable one.
All right, here we go. Oh, this might actually be a fun conversation. So if you have any tattoos, share the story behind one of them. If not, what would be a meaningful tattoo you might consider? I could not have picked a more perfect question, because I have for myself, because I have no tattoos. But you go first, because I know you have some.
I do. I have a number of tattoos, and they all have great stories behind them, but I will stay on theme. So I have a snowboarding tattoo here on my arm, which is trying to combine the love of New York City. So I have a bunch of New York City skyline buildings on there. And then myself, and this is the actual bottom of my current board, what it looks like, kind of snowboarding down out of the city into the snow. It's not even finished yet. It's only like a quarter sleeve, as they say, but I really do have a love of snowboarding, and that commemorated it.
Love that. That's amazing. So I'm like, maybe I should go to New York and get my tattoo there. Cause I don't know. So I decided it recently, and I've been thinking about getting a tattoo for a really long time. And I'm like cringing at the thought that if either my parents or my in-laws are watching this, they might like get judgy on me, but too bad. I've never gotten a tattoo because I didn't know A, what I should do, and B, where to put it. And so I've been thinking about it for a really, really long time. This is not like going to just be an, on the whim type of deal. But I also think that I'm very much into like words. I don't know, like pictures and images. It's so hard for me to like commit to that. But I know that there's words that are, kind of very literal. And I think I'm a very literal person. So I figured it might just be more like text type stuff. But I decided that I'm going to get 2 different tattoos, one on each like side of my arm, and they're going to have words. So one of them is going to have the cheerful from my logo. This is the first time that I'm saying this out loud to anyone. The cheerful from my logo, and probably we'll do it in purple just because I have to, but it'll basically say cheerful and then in small letters AF, just to be silly.
Nice.
And that gives the playfulness of who I am and kind of gives you a little view into like who I am as a person. Playful but happy. And then on the other side, I was thinking, and I got all these ideas for placement when I was at Lollapalooza. I was just watching everybody else's tattoos. I was like, ooh, I like that. One of the singers had like "be kind" on the side of her arm. I'm like, I should just do that because it's visible enough, but I can still hide it. So I'm gonna actually take like my top 4 values because I feel like I'm misunderstood a lot, and if it takes a while to really get to know who I am. And I'm this like ambivert where like sometimes I'm introverted and sometimes I'm extroverted. But if I put if I just list my top 4 values like on my arm in some nice font or whatever, then it's an easy way for people to like get a sense of who I am. So it's meaningful, but it's words and it's not images that I have to explain. And it just gives people like the most efficient way to get to know me on my body. So yeah. I don't know. We'll see. That's
what I love it. I love it. Yeah. You might find it, you get obsessed with them.
That's the thing that I'm afraid of, where I was like, okay, maybe I'll just do 2. But we'll start there and see. I mean, it was just like, where do I put 1? And I could do like a tiny little part on the back of my neck or whatever, but like I just want something that like really has like some deep meaning because this is permanent, right? Like, and I haven't been able to.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I should say they're as permanent as they are. They're also sort of dynamic. And just a really quick story is that at one point many years ago, I put an Ouroboros on my thigh, which is a snake eating its tail in a circle, to signify like strength and the ability to nourish yourself and like the man walks alone kind of imagery. Yeah. And then a couple of years later, that just wasn't connecting with me in the same way. And what I needed was a little bit more like peace and zen and like connection with the earth. So inside that tattoo, I put a lotus flower tattoo. So they're definitely dynamic as you go.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, and I think too, it's like as you grow and evolve, like things change and all that. Yeah. So it'll be interesting. So yeah. So now I'm at the point where
you gotta do it.
Yeah, I'm like, where am I going to get this done? And like, who do I know that like I would feel comfortable with? So we might have to talk about that at another time and get some. But I do want to signify like I'm going to be turning 40 next year, and like this will be like a good like milestone for me. And I just I want to do it the right way and then document the process and make it super fun. So
nice.
Okay. All right. One last thing is sharing cheerful news. And if this is the first time any of you are viewing a show, I do this segment really, really quickly just to promote more positive conversation and news in the media space. And, a lot of times we see a lot of negativity. And, it's not that we are trying to ignore that exists, but just trying to push more positive media as much as possible, because that's the only way that we can kind of combat some of the struggles and stuff, the tough stuff that we have to deal with on a daily basis in our world. So Emily, you want to share your story first?
Yeah, sure. So it's right in line with the power of words. I saw a news story about a woman who unfortunately experienced the suicide of her father.
Mm-hmm.
But from that, she chose to invest in billboard space and to put kind messages to people on that billboard space. So there's one billboard from the article that I read that says, like, you are human, you are lovable, you know, you are worthwhile. And when I walk around and I see that kind of messaging, I feel like it's speaking to me. You know, there's all those moments that you need some positive reinforcement. Billboards, if anyone drives on the New Jersey Turnpike to New York City, you can see a lot of crap on billboards. Mm-hmm. And the idea that we could replace that with positive messaging to people is wonderful to me. I was just so excited to see that story.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's like also that like you are beautiful sign, right? Like I remember when I was running a race in Chicago and like there was a huge sign. I don't know if it was like always there or like if that's where it originated. I didn't know anything about it, but I was like, that is so cool. Like, and it just helped me continue to run when I was like ready to be done. So that's awesome.
Yay.
Yay. And then my cheerful news story is super playful. And I just was like, oh, this is great. Because it happened in Chicago earlier this month. But I was like, ooh, it's Chicago and ooh, it's super fun. So there was apparently like a rubber duck derby and they were doing some sort of charity, I think was it Special Olympics? Might be doctoring. Yes, for the Illinois Special Olympics, but they dumped 63,000 rubber duckies into the Chicago River. And apparently they've been doing this for 14 years, which is like crazy to me that I have lived here my entire life and did not know that existed. But now I like want to put it on my calendar for next year because I think that would be super fun to see live.
That was so cool.
That was happening, which is like crazy to think that, you know, there's media like this, there's stuff that's happening so close to me that I don't even know about. And but the things that you tend to hear and see is like all the dramatic, you know, political or, you know, conflicting type of news, like that just stands out so much more. Or like whatever celebrity couple broke up, like this is not like, it's kind of crazy. So that's my story. So
yay. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. All right. Are you ready to talk tech?
Oh yeah.
All right, let's do this. So we're coming at it from, you know, two different perspectives of, you know, I love math and science and I geeked out on that stuff when I was younger. You are, you know, using technology and you know, in your business and at work and all of these things, and technology is everywhere, right? And I think even when we think about how far it's come since we were little, I mean, you know, cell phones did not exist until I was in college. And so technology has just been something that has become more and more prominent. I know that there are people out there who like just feel like they're not tech people. And, you know, we've already established that, you know, yes, both of us are somewhat like tech junkies in our own right. But people still gripe a lot about technology, you know, where it comes from. I think we were talking about this before the show started, just the AI is going to take over. Or like there's just, you know, we're removing jobs because we're becoming more efficient with the use of technology. Since you are in it more in the day-to-day nowadays, like, do you see other gripes that are, you know, that people have when it comes to technology? If they don't consider themselves like a tech person.
A techie.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I get that all the time, and they're all valid. There's not a tech gripe or a tech complaint that doesn't have some core validity to it. Whether it might not be that the technology itself isn't actually working. It might be doing what it's supposed to do, but it might not be doing what the person using it actually needs and wants to do. Yeah. I see in that discrepancy and that conflict where a lot of the issues come up, where people get most upset and frustrated. So some of my work is to help people recognize where that discrepancy is and help them see for themselves how they can identify what it is they want and they need and then identify the technology that can help deliver on that.
Okay. Do you see any like recurring issue that's like, man, this is just showing up for everybody? Or like in a certain,
Yeah.
Because
well,
yeah, I mean, because for me, I mean, I love technology and I will buy whatever new thing is out there just to have it and just to be able to like try it. Like one of the other people in the ASC was talking about that Remarkable tablet where it's like supposed to feel like, but it like can transfer your handwriting into text and like you can upload it and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, I just want that. That's cool technology. I probably don't need it with all the other things that I try, but I like have this desire to just want to try it because I hate paper. Like I know that about me, but to see other things. And then my other biggest gripe as somebody who loves to use technology is like, I've been struggling with email for like almost a year and a half now. And I had a different relationship with email a couple of years, 5 years ago even, but now I'm at the point where I almost don't even want to use email at all. And I'm almost training people to like reach out to me over like a messaging app because that's a lot easier for me. Yeah, like what other exists out there that you see?
The ones that you identified there are definitely common. So there's kind of two areas I'm thinking of. There's the main like day-to-day stuff that almost everyone interacts with and might have some sort of issue with: email management, browser tab, and window management. And what's been working for me in that is that it's all come down to actually more like project and task management and email and tabs and notes, even on paper or on Remarkable, Evernote, wherever. Is if it's not feeding into some sort of action task planning, then it feels like it's all over the place and it's hard to manage. So that's something I personally work on and also coach people. Yeah. And then the second area is some specific tech things that are big and that I've seen more in my work. So I work a lot with people who are working with Salesforce, and a gripe that I've seen and have been coaching people through is that actually Salesforce is getting a little big for its britches, if I could say. I mean, I love Salesforce, don't get me wrong. So if Mark Benioff is watching, like, I want to be with Salesforce. I love it. But the bigger it gets, the more complex it gets, the more coaching and training I find myself giving to get people to the level that they need and want to be at with it. And it's a little more confusing. So I think there is a fine balance with technology of being big enough to do all these things we want it to do, but also being focused enough so that people can feel confident using it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, in those spaces where like you have, data that you're collecting and you just want to try to make some sense out of it, that's where technology can be very, very beautiful. Because, who wants to do this, like these analyses, like by hand, or, you have to figure out how to manipulate data in order to make decisions. And with any business, that is key. But then there's also what I think is interesting that is, those two issues almost kind of come hand in hand too, because you have to know how to organize the data so that you can then play with the data. And so that totally makes sense. And I never thought about it that way in terms of like the main areas where like technology could kind of help. So that's interesting. What is your like big tech gripe, as somebody who loves it and struggles with it? Like what is your like right now?
Let's see. I think that the one that I tend to be most saying to myself over and over is when when something is too big and it loads slowly. So there's a couple of softwares that I use that the potential for them is great. Even honestly, like the way websites are built now, there's so much visual audio experience that can go into them. Sometimes if they're not done well, or just the technology isn't even there yet, it's a little slow. It's a little like botchy. Buffer. Yeah. So there was something I saw like years ago that Microsoft had published that said, if you have to wait like 0.5 seconds for processing to happen in Excel, then you're kind of okay. But if you have to wait 0.75 seconds, or God forbid, 1 to 3 seconds for something, you have lost your audience almost. So the speed with which technology moves is really important to us.
Yeah.
And it's important to me too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, we're always looking for ways to do things faster. And ironically too, I sometimes feel that, being able to leverage this technology in ways that are, that are making things more efficient and making things easier for us, it also is making us a little bit more impatient. And, because it's like, oh, God forbid, we have to wait 3 seconds for a show to start, while it's like, it's crazy to think that, back in the day, like, we didn't even have iPads and we didn't have Netflix, and, it's like, how did we live, and so I guess the people who are, coming into that digital age at an older age and just are like trying to navigate and trying to get through it, it must be an interesting adjustment, to not, having everything done pen and paper back in the day, or whatever, the VCRs and all that stuff.
Yeah, imagine that in only 10 to 15 years, we'll look back at this and think probably the same thoughts.
Yeah, it's insane. Okay, so we've kind of talked about some of the issues that exist in technology and how we interact with it. And, we're always here trying to figure out, okay, this is a problem or an issue or a situation that we want to try to figure out how to improve, right? And so I know that we talked a lot about, and in most cases, in most everything, you have to kind of start with the mindset and really understanding, what your situation is before you can make any changes. But what are some things that you recommend when you're working with people, on how to improve this relationship? Because it's one thing to have, to be able to, afford or have the technology at your fingertips to do certain things. But then it's like, how do you actually use it in a way to benefit you? Like, is there a certain process that you go through? And I'll compare it to what I am envisioning in my mind, of like how we improve this relationship with technology.
Yeah, there are a lot of different avenues to improving our relationships with technology, and there's a lot of great people talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
I really like Seth Godin's thoughts on this topic, and there's a person working under the company, a mindful techie, that I also really like. What I have found, one among many things, is a 4-step process that I personally use with almost any tech issue, or not just a tech issue, any problem I'm trying to solve that is going to use technology along the way.
Yeah.
So the first step is I write it out. So I close my computer, close my phone, whatever technology. I mean, you can do this in a Word document. You can do it on your computer, but I like to get pen and paper, and I write down what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to accomplish, what my goal is, and then any feelings I have about it too. Really, it's just a brain dump, writing out what I want to be true at the end, things that come up, complications or like asterisks that need to go into the thinking. And I have that all in front of me. Second step is I try to draw it. So if I can visualize a little bit about what I would want it to look like, it could be something that is more true to what it will be. So I know what Excel looks like. So if I want to think about drawing, boxes and lines and how I want things to look in the end, or even just something I'm coming up with, wouldn't it be great if some technology could do this and look this way?
Yeah.
So I draw out what I've written down. Third step is I break it down into smaller pieces. So if I have a paragraph or a page about a big picture idea, and then I draw that big picture idea, that end product, there's no one formula or software or like piece, on switch that's going to give me that big idea. I need to break it down into smaller pieces. And each of those smaller pieces are usually a lot more, they're less complex. When they get put together into the big picture, it's all complex, but the smaller pieces are a little more simple, usually more attainable. I typically don't have the skills to just program that big thing all in one go. but I do have the skills to do the smaller pieces that I could put together into a bigger picture. So I write it out, I draw it out, I break it down, and then finally I translate it, because all those first steps are not techie. They're not tech speak really at all. It's what I want and what I envision. Then I need to translate it into some kind of technology. Sometimes I know exactly how to do it. I'll take one of those small pieces and say, yeah, I know a formula in Excel for that, or I know how to do that in Salesforce. Other pieces I'll break down and say, I actually don't know the right way to translate this into tech, so I need to call in some help, or I need to do a little research, Googling, something like that. That's my 4-step process.
Yeah. And what I love about this 4-step process is that taking it outside of technology, you can apply this to any problem that you have, right? And that's the beauty of all this stuff. And as you were saying this, and I was thinking about like there's a it sounds very much like the engineering design process, which is also a similar process that I use when I'm coaching with people, which is totally non-techie at all. But it's kind of assessing the current state, like understanding like, okay, here's what I've got, here's what I'm working with. And then your second step was, kind of envisioning what you would like to accomplish. So it's like, what's your ideal scenario? What would you like that to look like? And then it goes into the actual, okay, let's figure out what are the actual steps that we need to implement to put a plan together, and then, execute and kind of see how things get, how you tweak things from there.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting that, I think a lot of times when it comes to technology, and just how things are kind of like how things come to fruition, right? The whole iPhone movement, whatever that was in 2008, it just became like the big thing that just seemed super fancy and everybody wanted. But then it's like, if you don't know how to use it, it doesn't really, there's nothing, there's no benefit there.
Just a paperweight.
It is just
an expensive paperweight.
Expensive, and it's just gotten more expensive over time. But when you kind of break apart some of the things that were happening in the design of this, I mean, we always, prior to that, right, what the cell phones had, either the numeric pad where you would type, for the letters, you'd press 1, 2, or 3 times, or then the actual keypads that mimicked, keyboards. But then understanding all of these other things where, hey, it's more of an intuitive, there's an art to how we use iPhones now, and just how much that's changed. And so I'm sure that every time they create some new functionality for a phone or for a computer or for any technological product, a TV, they're going through the same process. And so, but we don't think about it. We're just like, okay, this does what I need it to do. But you have to go through this process in order to understand what it is that you need in the first place. And I'm sure that you, Emily, encounter this when you're trying a new tech product, or, you're trying something and you're like, ooh, this doesn't, like, I don't like the way that this works in this way, because I like to organize things in a certain way. And I think that's why there's such a difference between how Androids and other non-Apple products are matched up. It's like what feels comfortable, and we either have to adapt to the technology, or we need to figure out how to make the tech work for us. Oh my God, I totally did that. That was amazing. And so it's just interesting how that has to come into play, because we can't really have a relationship with technology if we don't really know what we need it to do, right?
Yeah, there's definitely some correlation between human to human relationships and human to tech relationships. If you don't know what you want and you don't give it a try and maybe forgive and try again and learn to speak someone else's language and see from someone else's perspective, it can be a little challenging to think of tech in that way, because there is a perception, and rightly so, that it's here just as a tool to make our lives faster and easier. And I think that's true. I think that is a great part of technology. But as I was saying behind the scenes to you, most tech is kind of stupid. It's people who are smart. So if we don't approach it and use it in the way that is going to make it work for us, it's going to act stupid and it's going to frustrate us, and we're going to get to a point where we want to throw it out the window. So I think that what's great about what you brought up about how the process can be seen in other areas of life, like coaching, I see it actually in people who are doing community building and fundraising and a lot of the areas of like nonprofit work that I deal with. Yeah. And I like to tell everyone that you may not know it, but you are a techie. You actually have all the skills already to make tech work for you. It's just that either you haven't applied it in those skills in that way, or haven't thought about technology as something that you have those skills in. But for everyone listening, here is my message, is that first off, if I could do it, you could do it. That's a hand down. But that the skills that you have, that you've built already, are the ones that are going to contribute most greatly to having success with technology. And it's just about applying them possibly in a different way than you've done before.
Exactly. And I love that. And that's like a nice little package. Yeah, and I think it's really important too to know that, you know, anything that is arisen from all of the technology that we see is because somebody said, you know, I would love to see it this way, right? I mean, oh, how great would it be to not have to go to the gas station once a week, like hello electric cars. And there is always coming from this need to, you know, try to push us to this next level of, you know, how can we try something? How can we be creative? And I love too that, you know, technology, whether it, you know, you think it's numbers and it's very rigid, it is very creative as well. Like there's so much that you can leverage technology to do to keep to foster creativity. And sometimes you might have an accidental coding scenario where you get another result as a result of trying to find something else, which is the beauty of it too. So oh
yeah, I am not unlikely to jump for joy and do a happy dance when I figure something out in technology, and it's not because I just intrinsically love seeing code that's beautiful. It's mainly because it was kind of a fun problem solving, creative thinking, detective scenario for me, like doing a crossword maybe, or building a block tower with my kids. A lot of the same joys that I get from that come from figuring something out in technology as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love that. Okay, so I kind of want to shift gears a little bit and kind of talk about, since this is technology and we're trying to figure out how to use technology to further whatever it is that we are trying to do in our lives. And so I know that both you and I use a lot of, there's a lot of already existing technology out there, right? Like I was just talking about the iPhone. Like I'm an Apple person. I don't know. Are you an Apple person too? Or no?
I'm an Apple person for phone and phone accessories and tablets, but I am a hardcore PC person for computers.
Yes. Okay. So that makes sense. And then, so coming in this next part, I want to kind of talk about some of the technological software products, any gadgets that have made your life so much better, and in what ways they've done that, just to kind of plug whatever technology exists out there that people might not know about, or people need to know more about, or just, you know, giving another vote of confidence to something that already exists for people. But just making sure for anybody who doesn't know that exists, that out there.
Okay,
so
you're gonna have to cut me off because I could probably take up the rest of the time just plugging products I like.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, yeah, let's get into this, because I feel like this is gonna be the actionable, like, hey, if you haven't, you know, if you have this problem, this is how that solves. So yeah, let's start listing ideas.
Okay, and first off, I get zero financial compensation from any of these products. So I welcome financial compensation from them, but I'm not a paid product person.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
So we talked about email management, and we even talked about this offline. I really like SaneBox, which allows you to. One of the big things it does for me is it pauses my emails coming into my Gmail account until about 3 o'clock, except for some specific like email senders that I say I want to see immediately. That started to shift my perspective on what email was used for and how I could interact with it. But even just for that perspective shift, I really like SaneBox, and I think it's pretty cheap.
Yeah. And I'll just, because you were the one who introduced me to SaneBox, I was like, I remember that I was really like, nope, I don't want to pay for somebody to like help me filter my email. But then it got to the point where the pain was so like unbearable that I'm like, okay, let me just try it and just to see. And I did like a trial or something. And then I was like, oh, it's $2. Like they're giving me like $5 off to try like playing around with this a little bit more. Okay, I'll try it for one more month. And then that's when I was like, okay, I can see how this is helpful. I don't pause my emails until a certain time, but what I do note, I mean, because I try to do that manually where it's like, okay, April, use your own sheer willpower to just not check your email. But what I do like is that when I actually do go look at my emails now, I've got so many things filtered out into, you know, specific categories, and you can do all this manually, but I love the fact that SaneBox, you just like drag it to another folder and then it just figures it out on its own, which is great, because the way that I was using it in my other is like, I have to say, if an email is coming from this person or has this in the subject, then put it in this folder. And that's annoying. So that was leveraging the, you know, paying a little bit to save a little bit of time of doing my own filters. And you just have to the time versus money value. And so I kind of hit that. So, but what's great about it is that there's also different ways that you can leverage some of these technologies. And what I love about SaneBox is that you can, it just does that whole filtering faster for you. And also just I think there's also like fun little things about like, here's how many emails that you banished, or here's how many things that you were able to keep out of your inbox. And I don't check my email that often. And so being able to train it to only put important emails in my inbox is great. So
yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Number one. A second one for me is Airtable. And it sounds a little funny because Airtable, I think, similar to some other products, bills itself as like the solution to Excel spreadsheets. Excel and Google Sheets are a huge part of my life, and I love them so much, as funny as that sounds. What I like about Airtable is that it's kind of a pretty version of spreadsheeting. It certainly has more functionality. It has a lot more functionality. But the way I use it is to do my task management. And the reason I like that for task management is the user interface is nice, but it's also, you mainly can build from scratch. And there isn't a task management software that I have found. I like all of them. I like Asana. I like Todoist. I use one called Workboard. I like them, but they have things about them that I didn't build and don't function the way I want. And I wanted to build my task management system from the ground up. Airtable was a very pretty and functional way to do that. And I'm not even using all of the great things about it. So I definitely recommend it, although I recommend if you are intimidated by building some new tech thing or spreadsheeting by yourself, to look at their universe of existing products that people have built and shared. They have like volunteer management trackers and databases for planning your honeymoon or your next trip. There's a lot of great stuff in their Airtable universe. So I like that one a lot.
Or you reach out to Emily and ask her to help you.
Of course, absolutely.
I've never heard of it, and I think that is really interesting because it's taken me a really long time to figure out a task management system that's worked for me, because a lot of times I've used Asana, I've used Trello, I've used everything under the sun. My task management now that I'm using, I use Asana for team-based task management, but I realize that I have a lot of my own tasks that I can't commingle with other tasks that I'm doing collaboratively. So I found the Things app, which is, I don't know if it's just on Apple, but like, what I love about it, what I hated about Asana was that when I didn't do a task on the day that I assigned, or the day that the deadline or whatever, it would show up in red and basically say like it's overdue. And I didn't realize how much anxiety that gave me, where it's like, oh my gosh, I just like overdid it. Whereas now in this app, and I wish I could potentially share it. What I love about it is, you know, if I don't finish tasks from a prior day, it just keeps on like loading and saying like, okay, it's due today now. It doesn't give me this like, oh, you were supposed to do it. It just kind of gives me this rolling, you know, okay, this is on your to-do list for today. But then now I can basically say, okay, if I know that task has been sitting to do today for like a long time, I can move it into another place. And then, you know, clearly it might have not been that important if I didn't get it done in that moment. And then I try to put it in a different holding place, and it gives me that feeling of like, okay, at least I don't have all of these tasks that are just building and building like my email looks right now.
One last plug, it's not even a product, it's just a way of interacting with technology that I find I've really enjoyed is in addition to turning off most of my notifications, I have cleared my iPhone apps from my screen. So this is the only screen I have. It's just like an image I put up, or if you flip to the like widgets that they allow you, but I can't flip anywhere else to see a whole bunch of apps. They exist in these folders down here.
Oh, awesome.
But when I open my phone, it's just the image that I choose for it. And I change that whenever I want. And the serenity it's brought for me, the lowered amount of checking social media, the lowered probability that I'll just turn Netflix on because it's right there on my home screen was an incredible shift for me in my relationship with technology.
Oh, that's a really great, let me see if I can show people I haven't quite turned off many of my notifications. So as a comparison, so mine's a little bit more, I've got like my kids in the background.
More normal. It's like more typical of what you see. Yeah. I keep my kids on my lock screen for the most part.
I group a lot of mine so that I don't really see anything, but I think I've also trained myself to not allow the notification bubbles and all that to overwhelm me. And that's totally outside of technology, but it's just another thing to think about is that the way that the perspectives that we have around technology. I used to be a person who was like, I need to not have unread emails in my inbox, and, you know, 0 inbox is great. But like now you look at what I have, it's like, I've got 389, and I used to be really overwhelmed by that. But I've since decided, okay, I need to be at peace with that. It's because if I keep on trying to clear it, I am going to run myself into the ground and burn out. So there's definitely an emotional aspect of, you know, kind of how to have this go hand in hand with each other, because, you know, who's telling you that you need to have a 0 inbox? If that's something that you want and that you can work toward, that's great. But if it's causing you more stress and anxiety, then maybe there's another way. And it could be trying to find another technology solution, or it could also be just changing the way you look at the technology and what you need. So I've been training a lot of people to like email me less over the last couple of years, which has been a huge shift for me, because all I wanted to do was just have a paper trail for everything. And now I don't even check it. And I live by those notifications when I have messages in all the various apps. So,
Yeah. And really, I think search functionality in most applications has gotten so good that I don't really do much foldering anymore. A little bit in Google Drive, but I don't find that I need to spend time setting up folders and changing them around and getting things into the right folders for myself, because if it's not something I need to act on and it doesn't go into my action plan or a project plan, then it can go away and I don't really need a trail, or if I need to access it for some reason later, I can usually use the search. And that's a big shift for me, because I used to tout the organization and the hierarchy, and I used to really coach people on that. And now I don't find that I really need it that much anymore.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that's hopefully coming for me too, because I like to I like to keep certain things that I can very easily access, and I have multiple email accounts, and so I like the search functionality that Google just tends to have. So I store all of my old emails, but I just created signed up for like Google Suite for like a brand. I was like, maybe I just need to start from scratch and like consolidate to one email account. So I'm in the process of doing that right now, and I'm trying to set up new rules and everything. But it's very interesting because I don't even know what I was going to say. I just lost my train of thought. Um,
It's a shift for you to see it differently.
Because I like deleting stuff. But then there's other times where like, oh, I shouldn't have deleted that thing. And I like keeping things minimalist, but I can see myself potentially just letting go of that in the next couple of years. So it's an evolving relationship.
Yeah, I think that this is a real plug for why I focus, mainly on mindsets. And I always say 90% mindset, 10% technical, because we use a lot of the same technologies and we use them so vastly differently.
Yeah.
So we had to make it work for each of us.
Yeah.
And that is driven a lot by our own emotions, needs, mindsets, our philosophies about life, our time, our schedules. Like, the technology should not be driving us as people. It shouldn't be making you and me look so similar because we're using the same tech. It really should just be helping us be ourselves and express ourselves and do the work that we want to do better.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's amazing. And I totally 100% agree. Okay, I'm gonna check the time. Okay, so we're about to wrap up, and I like to close every episode with just a question that comes from our audience, and I always try to tie that question to something that's relevant to the topic and conversation. But just knowing that Emily and I are both two super busy people, we leverage technology in so many ways. This is a more like a overarching question, but to just have some final thoughts on this. The question that I got from somebody was, how do you structure your work and life, and how do you find time to do all the things you want to do? I think a lot of what we do, we lean on technology to make things easier for us. But if we think about it from the more broader perspective, what are some takeaways that you can share, or some tidbits that you can share about how you kind of manage your life? Because I know it's super busy, and I'll share some stuff on my end as well.
Yeah, so I want to be also a little vulnerable here to say that I felt like I was doing this really well for a long time, and then my second kid came, and I had to make a shift to be doing it better because things have changed. But things that have worked really well for me are journaling. So doing journals in the morning and in the evening, planning my day ahead of time and planning out my schedule the night before so that I don't have that anxiety in the morning, like what to do, what do I have to do? Mm-hmm. Recognizing that there's probably only 3, maybe 4 big things that I can accomplish in a day, and everything else is smaller tasks. Yes. So making sure I choose my big rocks or my big targets. Making sure that I really, truly check in with myself about what matters to me and how I spend my time. I can fall into the trap a lot of feeling bad about not doing more work and not being at work, even when I'm with my kids. And then I have to force myself to come back and say, actually, I'm more happy being with my kids. That's the meaning of life for me now. So as much as I enjoy playing around in Excel, if I had to choose one to bring to a desert island, I have to know my priorities there. Yeah. And then finally, I have to be better at communication, actually. Sometimes when things get busy and I get overwhelmed, I'll isolate and pull back, and then a whole host of other things comes from that. Wow. The more that I communicate with like my clients, with my friends, and especially with my spouse. I mean, the more sometimes I try to shield my wife from everything that I'm doing. But now I've seen the more that I actually talk to her and bring her into the fold and get her, to help me with scheduling a busy life, the better it turns out.
Yeah. 100%. And like, I'm listening to you and I was like, I have nothing to add because I do all those things. And I mean, I know that some of the stuff when we were very closely working together, it was like some of the stuff that we did was so aligned. And I know that when I don't have my routines in check, I am just kind of like fighting fires, and it's okay every once in a while. Like I like letting loose a little bit more on the weekends, but like I have to be so on top of things with my time management in order to do all the things that I want to do. And so, you know, I think a lot of people struggle with this idea of like, I don't want to plan, but you know, sometimes you have to do that. You have to create that structure or you can't get everything done. And if you choose not to, then that's fine. And you just have to shift the way that you see how fast things get done. Because you just can't get as much done when you're not planning, and it's okay because you don't have to do that all the time. One of the things that you mentioned too, I think, and this is something that I've been playing with, or something that we were talking about beforehand, is this idea of, you know, for me, my business, you know, I have work and I have my home life, but a lot of what I do is very commingled, and I have in the past kept things very separate, but it's not easy to do that anymore. And so like my calendar has all my work and personal, everything is kind of commingled. I started doing that with my task management to, you know, commingle all my personal and work, because it's so hard to check so many different things. And so I'm in this process of considering consolidating everything and looking at my life as very blended, instead of like, okay, here's what I do at work and here's what I do at life. And that's my personal preference because of the fact that I, you know, have the freedom to manage my schedule. But, you know, it's definitely something to think about because everything is interconnected anyways. And it might just be easier to go to less things instead of having 50,000 of the same, you know, of the same process in different categories, you know? So
yeah.
Those are our tips, and it looks like we are done for the day. And for those of you who are catching this live or on the replay, this is out in the interwebs forever, and you know who to contact. All of our information is in the video. If you ever have any questions about technology, we are more than happy to help. Emily, thank you so much. I'm so glad that we had time to get reconnected today and talk about something that we both are passionate about. And it's a journey, and it's always evolving. It will always continue to change as we learn more about how we can leverage different things that we are still trying to discover, and then seeing the impacts of putting those things into our lives. So tech is your friend as long as you choose to make it your friend. And if you have any questions, again, we are totally here. And next Cheerful Conversations episode will be out in a couple weeks. So stay tuned for that. And again, Emily, thanks so much. And we'll talk.
Thank you, April.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.